The joys of getting old with Dave Jones. Bob Flounders here with Dave. Blue White Breakdown podcast. Dave, haven't talked to you in a while.
No.
We definitely are going to get very quickly to men's basketball because I know that you've been covering them. I know you made a trip to the Palestra. They just had a big win, a couple of days ago. Good for them. I want to get your thoughts on that. But before, just real quick, I wanted to ask you about somebody that you covered on the Penn State football beat that you liked and really respected a lot. I did too. Paul Posluszny is going into the Hall of Fame. He's a member.
Oh.
He's a member of the 2024 class. I wanted to talk just a little bit about him and kind of get your perspective for the Penn State fans. Also, I don't know if you saw who's in the 2024 class. It is loaded. I want to throw out some names to you, but just Posluszny.
This is the College Football Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah. He's going to be a member of the 2024 class. Great career.
Which is now in Atlanta, right?
I think it is. I think they go to Vegas. But
yeah.
I really, really enjoyed what he did for Penn State, what he did at Penn State. Mm-hmm. He was a guy that could have left early, stayed for his final season. There at a critical time, played in 03 and 04, and then he was a leader on the 05 team, stayed through the 06 year, but really, really an intense guy who was an all-time great.
Yeah, I just caught myself doing this. You remember when you were asking the question, I went, remember when Sparky Anderson used to do that? And Tony, Kurt would be up in the booth and you go.
Sparky looked like he was 75 when he was like 45. That's what I remember on him.
He did, yeah. I think I was hard of hearing even at like 30.
He had white hair when he was in his late 30s.
Almost the moment he was hired in 1970.
Yep.
But Posluszny, I will never forget. You remember before the 05 season.
Yeah.
And not long before that, you had been actually turning the screws on Paterno, saying because the previous 5 years had been nothing short of.
Other than 02, which they were good. They're decent again, but it was like 2000, 2001, right. 2003, and 2004.
4 losing seasons out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 28 and 37 during that time. Is that
I just
right?
remember 3 and 9 and 4 and 7, and I was like, why did I accept this job to be on this team?
that is a part of it because you really never got to 02 was your first season, right? 02 was your first season on the beat.
There was some bad football right at the start.
02 was fun, but man, 03 was grim, and 04 was. What was noticeable about the 04 defense is how good they were under utterly trying circumstances.
Yeah.
Because they still hold some sort of record, and Posluszny and Dan Connor and all those guys are just young bucks.
Ali was kind of just starting to get started. The greatness of the 2005 team on the defensive end was really the roots were in maybe 04.
The Rice and Alford and all those guys are young pups.
Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, and we could still remember all those guys now. I mean, you could probably name the entire 11.
They fought to the bitter end, a losing fight, and they didn't go quietly.
I don't know that fans always appreciate
especially
a defense under siege when they have to be out there 80, 90 plays every game. I mean,
no help.
And that was at the beginning of high-paced offenses. It really hadn't taken hold, but it's pretty much getting into vogue there. Joe Tiller had started basketball on grass, so you're out there more snaps, and you're just dying. That 4-7 team, that defense never gave up more than 21 points in all these awful 11 games. They never gave up more than 21, and yet they were 4-7.
Yeah, and they had to win their final 2 games to get to 4.
That's right. With a big rout of Michigan State
at the very end. But
I don't remember when you turned the screws on Joe, but I believe the wording was do you think you deserve to coach another season? Was
I
that
said I
it?
think if things continue the way they are, he
Yeah.
deserves to be back next season.
And then Trevor Maddock jumped your ass on TV,
Yeah,
who's all of a sudden made a renaissance. Have you
I
noticed?
know. He doesn't look great on TV, but I didn't even know he was still around. I think
It's like,
is
he's
Mark
like
May
a
next? Is he
he's
coming
like
back?
a warehouse with a head. You know,
He
he's a big man. And so this is kind of the tableau there where we're going into '05
yeah.
preseason media day. I remember talking to 3 people, and they were the captains. I believe that's who they made available.
For '05.
Probably in the media room.
I
You know,
think it was
everyone.
Midas, Paul Posluszny, and Michael Robinson, I believe.
Correct. Those are
Yeah.
the 3 captains. And you remember? I mean, how
Yeah.
many other teams do you remember all 3 captains?
I'll never forget that team. I really not
Yeah.
just because of what they did, but because of how hard they played
And I
and
remembered
how good they were.
I remembered all of their conviction, but especially Posluszny
Yeah.
during those little sessions. And you can't fake that stuff. You can't fake it. You see it in a guy's eyes, even in a kid that age.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing it in Joe Crispin before the '01 basketball season, the fall of 2000, when he said, "We're making the NCAA tournament." And like, there had been no sniff in the NCAA tournament in 5 years. And
Right.
he really, really, really meant it. That's the way Paul Posluszny was then. And combined with Zamitis and Robinson, they all kind of took care of a third of that team's personnel.
Yeah.
There was a third of each team of the personnel that, and I don't know how to say it other than Posluszny was kind of you know what I mean. I'm not going to get into it, but all football players are different on a team, and it takes leadership in different sectors of it. And you can imagine Zamitis was a tough street kid kind of
He
kid.
was. Yeah.
Michael Robinson's a much more kind of upstanding. I think he was the glue of everybody.
Sure.
And Posluszny's, the white Catholic kids who you're from places like Cincinnati, Moeller, and he's that kid. And together they were a real leadership troika, a trio.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on Daily News Live, one of my few really good predictions.
I remember those shows. I always watched them.
And Barkan asked us it's me and Dana O'Neill and Dick Girardi. And Dana went to Penn State, so that she's on for other reasons, but she was on. And they both say 7-4, 6-5. And back then it was 11 games in the regular season. And I said 10-1. And everyone went, "What?" Because they haven't had even a winning season but once in the last 5 seasons.
You finally got one right, Jones.
I finally got one right. And blind squirrel. And Barkan says, "Well, wait a minute. What?" Girardi went, "Whoa, whoa," in that Philly way that he does. And
yeah,
I said, I just believe in the leadership and the conviction of this team. And this defense has been really good. And I think it's going to be even better than it was. I mean, that '05 defense, you stack that one up against this last one. I don't know who you pick.
Yeah.
Who do you pick?
Well, I'll tell you, talent-wise, I think maybe this defense was a little bit deeper, especially in the back end. But in terms of on the field, I mean, I think they're very close. But I would say the guys like Tom Bahali and Paul Posluszny. You saw a little bit of Dan Connor. I think he was a freshman, maybe, or he was a young player on that '05 team. Their best players were not only good in college; they were just good players, and they were good players at the next level. Tom Bahali, I think, is a Hall of Fame candidate for what he did at the Chiefs. And Paul, drafted in the second round by the Bills. Played late. He played for a long time. Played for the Jaguars. I think Sean Lee might have been a freshman on that team.
Yeah, he was.
Those guys were.
I mean, what a defense!
Really, really hard-nosed and talented. So there are talented guys, Dave, and there are hard-nosed guys, but you don't always see both. You know what I mean? They were both, and that's what I think set them apart.
I think they're still pissed off about that Michigan game. All those guys.
I think, yeah, they should be. They should be.
Yeah.
That was a team that was there to be had. They rallied an incredible rally, and they just couldn't get off the field at the end.
Tom Bradley checked in with me a couple weeks ago when he heard about my retirement. He called, and we had a good talk.
Still talking about it?
Well, Joe always liked to play zone.
Sure.
And he likes zone coverage, and I don't know whose call that was, but I think down there, don't you have to play man defense and trust your guys down there? It was 1 second left from the 10. Is that right?
Yeah. It was.
And Chad Henne is the quarterback, and Mario Manningham is running the slant, and one didn't pass off to the other. It's pretty complicated to get to play zone coverage down there. Well, I don't know. How do you feel? You don't want to get picked off in man. You don't want a rub route so you get picked off on the other hand.
It wasn't. It was the. Everyone remembers the last play, but Michigan I think had a short field after a kick return, but they just couldn't make one play in the whole sequence to really, whether it was a negative play or to get them. But yeah, I think you have to give. I think Chad Henne was a freshman, or he was either a freshman. Yeah, I think he was a true freshman. And that was a heck of a drive for a true freshman in that environment. I know he was at home, but against that defense, I think you got to give Michigan credit too.
Yeah, they plus 2 seconds, Bob. 2 seconds.
We'll do it, Dave. You're just going to get him riled up again.
Let's go through the airports. Remember how did we manage social media? There wasn't any social media. It was just emails, right, from fans. And they were flooding.
There was really no social media back then.
Flooding our phones with emails. I guess we're checking because I probably had a Razor. I don't know what you had, but it is. We are hearing. We must have gotten on our laptops in the Detroit airport, and I mean, I still remember you just shaking your head at all these people talking about Lloyd Carr putting 2 seconds back on the clock and with the officials.
But Dave, that defense. Let me just real quick before we wrap up, Posluszny. Just I think, and I know a lot of Penn State fans are remember that team. But for Penn State fans that might be in their 20s or 30s, they don't really remember. So Paul, he was a Western PA kid. We saw him at the very end of the 2003 season at Michigan State play a lot as a true freshman. He had 3 separate 100 tackle seasons. When he left Penn State, I think he was the all-time leading tackler because he never got off the field. I think 372. But he was also, he won the Bednarik twice, the Butkus once. He was an academic All-American. I mean, talk about a well-rounded guy who was just an elite player. We had LeVar Arrington, I think, go into the Hall of Fame in 2022. I think Paul Posluszny is a very worthy inclusion. And I just before we get to the basketball, I just want to read you some of the guys that are also in this class. And my first thought is, how did these guys have to wait so long to get into the College Hall of Fame? But I won't read you the entire class, but some of the names. Tim Couch, the Kentucky quarterback, not great in the NFL. But
it's a College Hall of Fame. It's a College Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Tim Couch was one. Warwick Dunn, Larry Fitzgerald, Dan Hampton, who was a standout at Arkansas.
I didn't know Dan Hampton played at Arkansas. Huh?
Yeah. Right. Steve Hutchinson, the Michigan offensive lineman that was on the 97 national championship team. Randy Moss, Julius Peppers.
Wow.
Yeah, Julius Peppers. And I don't know. I think this guy was pretty good. You would remember him from his college days. Chris Ward, the offensive lineman from Ohio State. But that's a hell of a class.
Yeah, and it kind of points up that college football is a different sport than the NFL. Yeah. A lot of these guys were just pluggers in the NFL, where they had good long careers.
Yeah,
and maybe not all pro, but just lasting 12 years like a lot of those guys did in the NFL. I mean, my God, that's hard labor. So all credit to Paul.
Yeah,
nice guy too, and one of the most amazing necks anyone's ever seen. Right? There's a guy who did not. He had like a built-in neck roll back when neck rolls were a thing.
I think late in his career, Paul had scar tissue on the bridge of his nose from all those collisions, and I think most games, like they would cut to him on the sideline, and he was usually bleeding. And I just think that's kind of how I'm going to remember him. Maybe I'm imagining that, but I seem to recall a couple of those games late in his career where there was a lot of blood. He was hell on wheels in that 2005 win over Ohio State. The whole defense was in that game, but the bigger the game, I think the bigger he played. That season before the Ohio State game, when they roughed up Minnesota, a game that really set the stage for the rest of that season. He had a big hit on the goal line on 4th and 1. He met a running back, I think it was Maroney, in midair, and after that, Minnesota was done. But
that was a good Minnesota team.
Yeah,
they were ranked coming into that game.
Big offensive line, 2 good backs. I think when you think about a list of maybe the 20 best Penn State players who's ever played, or even the top 15, I think he's on that list.
44-14. I won't forget that game soon. That was kind of the Northwestern. The game at Northwestern had been the week before, and you're thinking
22 tackles in the Northwestern.
Yeah, where they pulled it out at the end.
Yeah.
Isaac Smolko, and then maybe you're thinking, maybe they got something here, and then the Minnesota game was just a beatdown. It was emphatic. Minnesota was ranked. I think they were ranked 14th in the nation or something, and you're going, whoa. And then you knew they really had something, which was a big deal at the time. It was a renaissance of Penn State football.
But fun year to cover, maybe the most enjoyable year I had on the beat, just to watch this team play so hard. It wasn't just the defense. The offense did too. They had a really good special teams too. Ethan Kilmer was a madman as a coverage guy. But I just thought that team got after it maybe as much as any Penn State team in terms of playing hard. They brought it every game. They lost one game to Michigan. They brought it in that game. And I think that it has a lot to do with the 3 players who led that team, and Paul was one of them.
Plus, the Bowl Hotel was great in Miami.
Wasn't
it great?
Dave, not get sidetracked about the Orange Bowl. We're gonna segue to one of your favorite topics, college basketball. Huge win. Johnny and I just barely touched on it a little bit earlier this week. I just wanted to get your thoughts on where this program is, what Mike Rhodes has been able to do. I know they're 9-9, and it's been, good and bad, but they had a nice win at the Palestra. I know you were there, and the win over Wisconsin. That's a pretty good team they beat. What do you make of this team, after 18 games?
Well, they're pasted together from spare parts. I mean, they are the classic portal era team where a coach has to come in and just grab whatever he can, however he can, from whatever sources he can. And some hit, some miss, and you've got to glue all these guys together. There were 10 guys from the portal, I think Mike Rhodes got in 59 days, I think it was. He said it was the hardest thing he's ever done in coaching, and he's had 2 head coaching jobs in the bigs and another one at in small college. He's been a head coach for a long time. He's not the kind of guy who gets a big time coaching job through being an assistant in a huge program. He really learned how to do it. And he said it's the hardest thing he's ever done. And the last 2 months have been really hard too, in just trying to get these guys to know each other, trust each other. Basketball is about trust, and to some extent, so is football, because you got so many guys out there. What Bill Belichick always said is just do your job.
Yeah.
Because he didn't, I believe the rationale was that sounds like a simplistic statement, but you want to just convince guys if they do their job, they don't have to worry about, you just trust that I'll get everyone else to do their job, and that will build trust. You just do your job, worry about your job. Don't think, oh, what if this guy fails over here? I might have to do this. Don't worry about that. Just do your job. That is really hard in basketball when you've got guys from different places all meshing together, trying. And in this instance especially, they've got 2 point guards, 2 real alpha dogs in Kanye Clary, who was one of the very few leftovers, along with Demetrius Lilly from the old team under Micah Shrewsbury, who did not play all that much last year. He started getting important minutes in the NCAA games. Micah put him in against A&M and took him out after he did some crazy harebrained drive to the hole, because I watched the tape later, and Micah turns around and like points at somebody, does one of those because he was so disgusted. But the game was a blowout. I mean, they were up 26 or something at the time on A&M, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But that was big. Clary had some really good minutes in Chicago in the NCAA tournament, but he was playing about 6-8 minutes last year most of the time. Sometimes didn't get in the games. All of a sudden, he's thrust on the scene, and he has taken it and run with it. Man, he has been a phenomenon. A little out of control sometimes. Does like trick shots off glass, like Willie Mosconi. I've never seen a kid back to Taylor Battle.
There's no one other than you and I who got that reference. But
okay, Minnesota Fats.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's heard of him. I mean, using spin on the ball in pool, the rail, but on here on the glass is kind of a lost art. I mean, the stuff he does it's forget Allen Iverson. It's like early Nate Archibald. And you talk about stuff nobody saw, because I was in Ohio, and I got games.
He was tiny, but you can call him Nate.
Well, back then he was Nate the Skate. That's what the guy called him on the radio in Cincinnati on WLW. If you could believe that, never stuck. But you would hear him talk about this guy, and then you'd have to see him with the Cincinnati Royals before they moved to Kansas City to become the Kings, who are now Sacramento Kings. Right. But Nate Archibald was a phenomenon. I mean, a phenomenon. One of the things he did back then was the way he used spin off the glass. I mean, he was amazing doing that. That's what Kanye Clary is doing. He's shooting shots that don't look like they have any business of going in. 5-8 feet off the backboard from one edge of off the lane, and throwing these things off the glass, and they're going in. And he did it at the end of the game with 37 seconds left to go against Wisconsin to essentially ice the game, take it from 4 up to 6. And that was the end. I mean, the shot he made there, he combines like Taylor Battle's ability to do that with Tim Frazier's incredible quickness. He is a phenomenon. He's shooting like 56% on 2-pointers, which is crazy for a little guard. And then he's shooting a good percentage, I think 38, 37 from 3. He's making a lot of shots. But on the other hand, he's a true point guard, and he's kind of had to defer to the other point guard that Mike Rhodes brought with him from Virginia Commonwealth, Adrian Ace Baldwin, who really has to be a point guard. He really needs the ball. Clary can kind of play off the ball. They've finally, after a couple months, seem to have learned to play together, and they're trying hard. It was a struggle. They lost to Bucknell, which was a bad loss at home in December. They did not look good. It did not look like the kind of team they look like now. They're not going to win any trophies. They're 3-4 in the Big Ten.
Okay.
That's about the strata. They're going to finish, I think, 8-12, 7-13. But for this team, doing what it can do, and they shoot threes very erratically, and they have no interior presence outside of Qudus Wahab, who's one big they have out of Georgetown. They and he also went to Maryland. They're doing the best they can. That's what you can say about them.
All right. I have one question for you. I looked at Penn State's schedule, the men's basketball schedule. I think they play this Saturday.
We're at Columbus, yeah.
And then the following Saturday. So they're essentially down. There's a lot of downtime next week. I think they just play Saturday, then the following Saturday. My question for you is there any chance you could convince Mike Rhodes to come on this podcast?
I don't know. We could try.
I was going to say.
In season, it's kind of difficult.
What's that?
In season, it's kind of tough.
I know, but I did notice there's a little bit of a break there. I know that you and him have a relationship. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think it would be a fascinating.
You're talking about middle of next week.
Yeah,
because
they're off. It's between Saturday and Saturday.
They've got a terrific media relations.
I think it would be a fascinating conversation.
I will give it a shot.
I know you would enjoy it too.
No, I mean, he's a great guy.
I think you would as well.
He's a great guy. I've known him forever.
That's the thing is you guys go back.
His mentor was Pat Flannery. I think I told you last podcast that you know what I was doing during the Buster Douglas Tyson fight.
I can't remember, but you do mention Buster Douglas and Tyson.
I was in Annville covering a Lebanon Valley College game. And I think Mike was a freshman, so I'm not sure.
I think Mike Rhodes owes you because you were there.
So you owe me.
You need to pull that card.
That's tough in season, but I will give it a shot.
I know it's a long shot, but if he says yes, it'll be a great podcast.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more thing to get to on the Blue White Breakdown. I just have to ask you about this. It's not necessarily Penn State related, and I don't know how much you've been following, but as time goes by every day, I just get more and more. I don't know if mesmerized is the right word, but
by Caitlin Clark's State Farm commercials.
No. I saw your column. It was great. I hate to say this, but it's Jim Harbaugh. I just can't. I'm like a moth to a flame. I don't know what this guy's going to do next. It's going to just leave me shaking my head.
I had a really great. Has something happened today with the Chargers?
I mean, he's flirting with the NFL. Yeah. He's trying to get this.
I think something is
contract from Michigan.
Something is going to happen.
Charges.
Something is going to happen today.
Oh, you do?
I can tell you.
So it's Thursday.
We're going to know. Put it this way. We're going to know something. I believe today.
All right.
He has already talked to the Chargers. I believe he talked to the Falcons.
Correct. That's right.
The Chargers is the job that you would want of those two, or any of them, correct? I mean, what about the Commanders? What's going on there?
I don't know that he is on their radar. I know that I think the Chargers are very interested in him. The Falcons are also flirting with Bill Belichick, so I'm not sure.
As far as just your opinion, as far as cap space, management, ownership, wouldn't the Chargers be the choice for you if you were, especially in weather? I mean, you're going out there.
It is weather, and they have a quarterback. Atlanta does not have a quarterback, but they're better positioned. But yeah, you take the Chargers job though. You're in a division. You're in a division with Andy Reid.
I don't think he cares about that.
I know, but I mean, I just think that I never know what this guy is going to do next, and I'm just not sure if he's making it up or if this is all part of a master plan. Does he have any interest in coming back to Michigan? Does he want to get out of there?
You're kind of a Seinfeldophile, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen enough of them.
Sure.
You remember the Hamptons episode where
this isn't the shrinkage episode.
Shrinkage and Jane's topless and all that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's got a lot of great bits in it. And Elaine is like smitten by the doctor, who's also a guest there because he's handsome, and she's like, oh my God. And they're out on the deck, and they're having wine, and he's the pediatrician because you got to see the baby. And remember, it's also the ugly baby episode. My God, have you seen it? It's an incredible episode, really.
Yeah.
And she tries to make conversation with the doctor. Some night, huh? Some sunset, huh? Some ugly baby, huh? And before that, he's kind of doing this. You remember? He's like here's this beautiful girl next to him. He's looking at the sky and doing stuff like this. That's Jim Harbaugh. That's Jim Harbaugh. He's just wired differently, man. Yeah. I mean, anybody else would be like chatting up the girl, but he's just not on our wavelength. That's genuine. That is absolutely genuine. It's not an act. If that's what you're talking about, I can tell you that is true. And my brother-in-law is on the staff, and I've heard lots of Harbaugh stories. He's not a normal dude. He's just not a normal human being.
This isn't fake. This is just how he is.
Oh, yeah. And some people can deal with it and some can't. And I guess with the 49ers, there were too many people who couldn't deal with it.
He wears thin.
Yeah, there are people who can work for him and people who can't. And I think people have forgotten that during this late run of success. I mean, he hit a sweet spot here. Look, I was wrong saying that he would never win a Big Ten title. And here he's won the national title. But think about how close I was. I mean, he was that interview with the Vikings.
Right.
From being out the door, people at Michigan wanted him gone. They were like, "Don't let the door hit you in the ass." You remember that? People forgetting that now. That
Ohio State, when they just got blown out.
They were getting hammered every year.
Yeah.
But a couple of things happened. Two guys were all of a sudden out of the picture: Urban Meyer and Mark D'Antonio. Mm-hmm. And they were his nemesis. They were. They both had ways to beat him. He was kind of intractable in what he did on offense. He was bringing in Josh Gaddis to kind of revamp the offense. Yeah. He was questioning himself. Jim Harbaugh questioning himself. That didn't work out. He was casting about. He was casting about for solutions. This is Jim Harbaugh, all right? They were that close. If he hadn't botched that interview with the Vikings, he would have been out the door, and they never would have won anything. I always thought he had an eye on the NFL. I did. It's just that Urban Meyer left and Mark D'Antonio left, and the guys in their place were not close to the tacticians and workmen-like drill sergeants. Also, the portal happened. Yes. And I think Harbaugh, for all of my comments about how he'd be intractable, I think he's adapted to the portal and on NIL. He's embraced NIL, which a lot of coaches haven't. I mean, Dabo Sweeney, he won't modernize at all. He's like an archaic, you know. He's obsolete. And Harbaugh is smart that way. He has embraced it, but it is a new age. I don't think Urban Meyer can coach anymore, period, because his act in coercing players is not going to work with big boys in the NFL. We saw that in Jacksonville. Right. And now he can't come in and lean on college players because they're like, you know, they're like, F you. I don't need this. They've got options. They've got power because money is power and they're getting money. So he can't do what he did anymore. Right. Harbaugh can do either. I think if the Chargers job is offered to him, he'll take it. And I don't think any of the other jobs are good enough quite to entice him. If that doesn't come through, I think he'll stay.
Yeah. And if he leaves, he's leaving on a great note, right?
How can you argue?
The program. He got him a national title. It's a great walk-off, and he can spend the next 5
years. It is amazing how it happened because he kind of dismissed Gaddis and took over the offense, installed Sharon Moore in his place. Usually offensive line coaches are not good play callers. I think Sharon Moore did a terrific job in that job. And all these things kind of worked out for him. I mean, all of a sudden, Ohio State was not this. Ohio State became less physical, and we have talked about that.
Yeah.
So he becomes more physical. Ohio State's less physical. All of a sudden, he's got a little edge there, an advantage that they didn't have before. Penn State's wide receiver room crumbles over the last few years. You know, James Franklin was beating him at home at least and beating him convincingly a couple times. They had probably, you could argue, better skill players for a while on offense. That stopped. Mm-hmm. And Michigan State was just, you know, an S show in every way. And all these things kind of happened for him, but he made some things happen too, you know, more power to him.
Yep.
Except they're big fat cheaters, of course, but.
All right, Dave, we will talk next week. Hopefully you can get a special guest on the show. If not, we got a lot to get to, and we'll get hopefully one way or another, we're going to hear about your thoughts on the men's basketball team. I just think they're fun to follow because
fun team to watch.
Seems like they're capable of anything if they play the right, if they goes their way. And I think the Wisconsin game and the Michigan game were proof. Did you have fun at the Palestra?
Oh my God, the trapping. See, it was an awful first half, and they couldn't make any shots, and people are starting to grumble. But it's this beautiful atmosphere. It's just it's a day game. You've got the sun coming. There's no sun, but you've got sunlight coming through the windows.
Yep.
Sorry, I've had a cold.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was a great experience again. It's a fun team to watch because they trap all over the court. They play a style that nobody else does.
All right, good. All right, Davo, we'll talk next week, and we'll see what Jim Harbaugh's next move is. We'll see what's new with Penn State.
I think I've reached my limit. It's okay.
I got you.